Okay. Sorry, it's been a minute since I've looked at this print, so I gotta kind of refresh myself here. Okay. Let me pull up the AutoCAD file we're dealing with here, and I'll pull up the architecturals and just kind of verify where we were last time. Looked like right where we left off, we put in our elevation section and detail calls, as you can see here. And we did put our dimensions on the print, including the plan, elevation section, and detail dimensions here. So I think what we need still looks to be like finish calls and hardware calls. So what we're going to do, first off, I need to pull up the architecturals again. Let me just go ahead and verify what my arc reference was for my elevation view. Looks like page A622, view number 6 here. Okay, there we go. All right, and I'll probably go ahead and split screen this here just because I think what we're going to be doing here is we're going to kind of just be fact checking ourselves a little bit. We need to make sure we have all of the different materials called out that appear on the architecturals, which we haven't really gone through yet. And then one other thing that we haven't really done, at least not that I'm aware of that we've covered yet, so I think we need to also include how you add a hardware or a material to the material log. I'm going to try to pull up that section view there too as well. A730, view number 4. Gosh, when it loads. Okay, there it goes right there, view number 4. Okay, so it says 1/4 inch thick by 1 inch deep continuous metal angle, which we did cover that last time. We kind of drew it in. We have a section sort of detail of that here. And we're going to have to make a hardware call for this item here as well. So I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. But let's go ahead and bring in any finishes that we need as of this current moment. So it looks like we need WDV01, which would be our VN1 if you're looking at the material log. We also have SS1, which would be, or SSO1, which would be our SS1 in our material log. And then we're going to have to add the metal angle there. And that should be about it as far as finishes go on this. So let me go ahead and start bringing in those materials. If you're using a template that I've made for the drafting team, I have these for each individual project, and at the start of the job, any materials or hardwares that we are aware of will be added to this material log on the right-hand side, which makes things a lot easier for you because all you got to do is kind of plug and play from here. So we just need to find what finishes we're using as of right now. So we have SS1 first, which would be this guy here. That's that Cryon 6504 colors plus Mocha 1/2 inch thick. So what I'm going to do is use the copy command, or copy base, I'm sorry, command in AutoCAD. Copy base operates just slightly different than copy because copy base is going to allow you to select a base point as you copy that item. So as I use that, it's going to ask me for that base point right now, to which I will grab that corner there where the green alignment guide matches the border of this. And it'll ask me to select an object. So we're selecting SS1, that material call there. Let's go ahead and use our Control V, paste that in up here. And then we're going to do the same thing for the VN1 call over here. We need to, VN1, go ahead and match that up here. So copy base, grab that corner, copy the material, bring it back over here, Control V, and paste. Just like that. So now we've got our base trim material and we've got our panel material here. What we need now is we just need to add in the metal angle. So the metal angle is a little deceiving. When you're looking at that there, ours is slightly different than what the architect has, but it's not going to change the appearance of what it looks like from the outside. We did make this leg a little bit longer than what they have shown on their detail, And the reason why we did that was because in order for us to buy a stock item or a stock item for a metal angle, we had to do some research on Metal Supermarket's website and just confirm that this is an angle that you can actually buy without having custom fabricated. So that's what we've done here. And it does say refer to elevations for finish, but unfortunately for us, if we go to our elevation view, there really isn't a finish called out for that metal trim, and it's actually not really even shown. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to put a finish on the hardware that says finish to be determined. And then we'll also make note of that in our drawing here too, so that way the architect can specify what the desired finish of that base angle is going to be. So let's go into how you add one of these into our material log on Airtable. So let's pull up the material log. Let me pull that up here on my main screen here. All right. And when you pull this up, you should be looking at the material log tab, and you're also going to be wanting to look for the open job calls view. That open job calls view is going to harbor all of the hardwares as well as the materials for each project that we have it on site, unless the job is closed. If the job is closed, there's no more work on it. But if you go through this list, it means that all these jobs are at least active in one department or another. So what we're going to be looking for is we need to find the job that we're working on. I scroll down to here, that's 6434. So let's go find that. 6434. There it is right there. Okay. And the one thing that we need is we need to add a hardware call for the metal angle. So because we don't have one here already for that, we're going to be adding one here. It looks like when you add that, it'll be hardware 57. So let's keep that in mind. Now, if you're adding one material, the easiest way to do that would be to use the material input form. If you scroll down into your list of different views, that would be here under the drafting tab. You go to material input form. What's going to happen is it's going to say you can't configure a locked form view, and that's okay. But what we want to do, instead of using this, we're going to go up here to where it says open form. You click on that, and then it's going to give you a survey, which will ask you, hey, what is the job number that you're going to be putting that material or hardware on? What are you going to call that hardware or material? What does the architect call that hardware or material? What's the brand? What's the item number or the color number if applicable? What is the material name or description? What is the finish? And then what is the type of hardware here? Then of course, if you have a link, like a hyperlink to that file, the website that you're going to pull this from, you can include that here. Now, because this is a standard angle that we're using, like a metal angle, we won't have a link for that here. So let's go ahead and fill this out. Make sure I got that job number again. Sorry, I got to backtrack just a tiny bit. 6434. So go ahead and hit add. Type in 6434. Should pull that up. All right. On-site call input. So this is where it's important to make sure that you're grabbing the right hardware number. So if we go back to the list, the open job calls, and we go back down to our job here, 6434, you can see that hardware 56 was the last hardware used on the job. So we need to add one for hardware 57. It'll be the next available number on the list. So HW-57. Now the ARC call, if the architect has a reference or a call to this, you can put that here. If the architect doesn't have a label for that angle or that finish, you can just write NA for that, for not available. Material brand. Now, if you're adding an actual material like a veneer, a laminate, a solid surface stone, you name it, you will put the brand in here as well as the item number for that item. If you don't have that, so for example, metal angles or metal products generally don't have a brand or a material item number for the most part, you can skip over these two for right now. The material name / description that is going to be where we're going to input the majority of the information that we need here. So let's go back to our drawing here real fast, and let's measure that angle again to make sure that we're speccing the correct size. So on our drawing, what I'm going to do is use a DIST for distance check. And we're going to go from the center of that angle out. So it's 1.75 by 1.75 by 0.25. So that will be here. And what we're going to do is we're going to label this here just like that. So 1 3/4 inch by 1 3/4 inch by 1/4 inch for your thickness. And then you're going to write steel angle. For the finish, I'm going to write TBD for to be determined because we actually don't know what the finish is and the architecturals don't really give us much help there. So we're going to leave it as TBD. We're going to go down to type and then we're going to select hardware from this list. If you ever have a question about what the type means or you need help finding the right type of input that you're putting in, just ask me or anybody else on the team and they'll help direct you to where to go. Because this is a hardware, it will fit within the hardware type here. And because I don't have a link to a website for this item, I can just leave the OS call link blank. That's just a hyperlink to where you found that item. Now, we did find this on Metal Supermarkets, but that doesn't mean that's where we have to order it from. So because that description as generic as this is perfectly fine. So we're going to hit submit. It'll say thank you for submitting the form. And if you don't have anything else, you can close out of this tab. Or if you do, you can click on this button and it'll restart that menu for you. Now, if I go back to the material log here, you can see that there is a hardware 57 now at this point, and it just say is a 1 3/4 by 1 3/4 by 1/4 inch steel angle finish to be determined. All right, now comes the fun part. So what we're going to need to do is copy this, and you want to be careful to make sure that you're copying from the description column here. This is what's called a concat formula, which will combine all of the information over to the left into one singular line here. So it's going to have that, it's going to have the TBD, whereas if I copied it from here, it will not have that TBD. So you want to be sure you're grabbing from the right column. That would be description here. So I'm just using Control-C on my keyboard, and I'm going to go back to my AutoCAD file and hit Control-V to paste that in. If you have something like that and you're trying to paste this in, but you don't really have any blank hardware calls over here on the left, or sorry, on the right, what you can do is you can copy one of the existing material calls that you already have in your bank over here. And we know this is going to be hardware 57, so I'm going to type over that HW57. Go back to the material log, Control-C, copy that description, Control-V, paste that description right there. All right, that's all you really need. So now that I have that, we've got the solid surface for the base, the veneer for the panels and the reveals, and we have the hardware 57 for the metal angle between the solid surface and the veneer panels. So I believe that's everything that we need. Again, I know I mentioned this before, but when you're dealing with cabinets, cabinets will have a lot more to add as far as finishes and hardwares go. Panels are very lackadaisical. There's a lot less to really worry about. So really all you have is your finishes. And if you have any hardwares, you would put those there as well. So as far as the general notes go, let's kind of take a gander at that. We've got on-site casework notes, so you know right there that none of those are going to apply to what you're dealing with here today. We don't have a banquette or a bench here, so none of that's going to apply. Your drywall notes, we aren't framing anything here, so we don't need any of that either. You do have base trim on this drawing, but it's important to note that it is solid surface base. And as we mentioned before, anytime you have solid surface, stone, or metal base, you won't be scribing that to the floor. So with that being said, we want to be very careful about what we are selecting up here as far as the base trim notes go. Um, so actually, none of these really do apply because really the finished base will come like it'll be. I guess we could still put the finished links, but like it's not going to be on MEDX core because it is a sheet of solid surface. It's not like a laminate or a veneer where it's going to be applied to a core material. It's going to just be its own core material. Then over here, we have all walls, floors, and in-wall blocking are by others, so you do need that. We'll copy that and paste it in over here. Okay, now as far as all these other notes go, we don't have any equipment, we don't have any welding. Well, yeah, we don't really have any welding, but we do have a metal strip in here that we need to account for. So generally, if you have a metal shop drawing, like as in like you have a frame or anything that's like super complicated that you need to have welded or put together by a metal fabricator, you'll want to put these notes on that drawing. Now, because this is just a standard angle, there really is no need to put these on the drawing, but I just wanted to bring that up here because that can be kind of confusing too. And then over here, we don't have any poles because we are not dealing with any cabinets today. So one last thing I want to add to before we even finish the general notes here is I want to add a note that says architect to specify finish of hardware 57 because we don't really know what that is and we want to make sure that we do get that information from the architect by the time the print gets released to the shop or to whoever is ordering the metal because it's really important that that finish matches whatever the architect is trying to obtain there. So what I'm going to write here is we're going to make our own note, and this note is going to read architect to specify finish of hardware 57. That's as simple as it gets. It's just a quick reminder to remind the project manager and the architect that we do need that information in order to be able to produce the product on this drawing. Really, there's nothing much else to add. So page notes, general notes, finishes, and hardwares, we're good to go there. But what we need to come back to is we need to start putting labels on our drawing. So let's go ahead and start with that. Because the majority of the finishes on these panels will be located on the elevation view, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and actually put majority of my material calls on here. I do still need to put my hardware call somewhere for the angle, and I'll probably put that here on the detail or the section view. We'll get to that when we get to that and see what we want to do with that. So when I put my materials and hardware calls on, what I'm going to be doing is making sure that I'm double clicking in my viewport because my viewport is locked down here with that blue padlock. That means that I won't be able to zoom in or out inside that viewport and mess anything up with my view scale. So that's great. That's what we want. But what I want to do is I want to come back over here to my tool palettes and go to on-site annotation. I'm going to pull up the finish symbol and we're going to place that in our base trim here. This should be SS1 based on what we put in our finishes and hardware list over here, just to be sure. Yep, there it is right there. And then when you put these on your drawing, this might be a little bit over the top, but it is important to try to bring these in. And I usually go from the corner out 2 inches, over 2 inches, kind of like that. I've also seen people center these on their print as well, and that's perfectly fine as well. You just want to make sure that they're not just like plastered like all over the place like that. Like you really don't want that because it's not going to look good at all. What you want to do is make sure that you're being consistent with where you're putting those material calls. So if you're putting them in the corner or moving them 2 inches up and 2 inches to the right, that's fine. Just make sure that you're maintaining that same method as you go through and put those material calls on the drawing, just for consistency's sake. Now, whenever you're dealing with veneer, it is always going to have grain direction to it. The same applies for solid lumber or solid wood as well. Some laminates will also have grain directions on them, and because of that, you want to be careful about that when you go to put a laminate on a drawing. Whether it's cabinets or panels or wherever it's being used, you want to verify that it doesn't have any grain to it. If it does have grain to it, then you do need to add a grain direction call to the print. And those are really easy to add. You just click and drag right from your tool palette into your print. And usually what I'll do, again, is I'll stack it on the side of my view call, and then I'll move it over 2 inches to the right or so. And then what you can do is you can copy these through. Now, it might be a little overkill to place these on every single panel. In fact, I would suggest probably not doing that unless you really want to. But what I would suggest is that you probably want to put these VN1 calls at least one row or one column up. And what I mean by that is kind of like go straight up like this. If you have a wall of panels like this, that'll give the reader enough information to understand that these are all veneer and they're all vertical grain direction. It wouldn't be incorrect to place these on every panel, but it will muddy up the drawing and kind of make things look a little bit more sort of all over the place. I mean, you can make it look clean, but there's going to be a lot of material calls on there. And if you can imagine when you go and do that, the other problem with that is that as you go and you have to make updates to the print, like if they changed it from VN1 to VN2, that means you have to change every single one of those calls to VN2. So one thing that's going to be important is you kind of want to maintain consistency. And a good thing that I like to do is kind of just run straight up like this to be able to label all of my panels just like that. Yep. All right. So one thing we haven't really covered yet too, and that I do want to make sure that we do talk about this, is that there is a need for this 60-inch panel, at least according to what the architecturals were calling for. Going back to their elevation view, they actually call this out to be 60 inches hold. And so with that being said, what you want to do is you want to take note of that, because when a panel is produced, usually what you want to do is make sure that panel is about 48 by 96 at its max size. Anything larger than that, and it starts to become sort of a manufacturing issue. So what you can do is, let's say you have a panel like this that does need to be 60 inches wide, which is larger than the 48 and 96 on the other side. So what we'll do is, if it's an absolute need to be able to make a panel that way, we can do what's called a shop joint. A shop joint on a print is labeled with an SJ, which just stands for shop joint. And all that is it's an invisible seam. By the time it's done being installed, you will not really be able to tell there's a seam there. But the seam is really important because it is going to be able to, or it's going to be what makes this panel be able to be 60 inches wide, because we can't make this panel 60 inches wide on its own. It has to have a seam in it somewhere for that to work. So what we want to do now that we have this in there is we do want to label that as a shop joint. And in order to do that, all you're going to do is put a text box above it that's going to say SJ for shop joint, just like this. And I'm going to place it just right above there so you can kind of see what I'm doing with that. And we'll also put that shop joint there as well. You can also bring in one of those labels up to there as well if it helps. I would suggest making sure that it's called out to the point where people are going to be able to see that and understand what that is. All right, so SJ for shop joint. And again, What a shop joint is it means that this panel is really going to be in two pieces when it's being produced, but the shop is going to assemble this panel as one piece. So what they're going to do is take those two panels and they're going to dowel and they're going to glue, or they'll biscuit and glue those two panels together. Biscuits are just a little joinery piece that gets routed into the side of each panel, and they apply wood glue to that, and then they press those two pieces together, and then they will likely veneer over the top of it once that's all done. So this panel is going to look like one panel, but really in the grand scheme of thinking, it should be two, because you can't go over 48 inches, and clearly here we're way over that. All right, so that's your shop joint there. One thing that I know I forgot to do too, well, I got to finish filling these out first, but one thing I forgot to do was add in that pesky water fountain too. So we're gonna make sure that we come back to that too. All right, so before I do that though, let's go ahead and add hardware 57 to the detail call here. When you're dealing with a detail call, I know I said if you double click in your viewport, you should put your hardware or your finish call in there. Sometimes it doesn't always allow for that with a detail call because of how confined they are. So if you run into an issue where you're not able to place that hardware call inside of that bubble, you can go here and place it in your paper space off to the side. I'm just kind of making that a little bit bigger than what it was, so there's a little bit more margin space. But then I'm going to take the hardware 57 call, place that there, and I'm being really careful not to make sure there's any sort of interaction there between that leader from the hardware 57 call and the 16th inch dimension there. I really don't want to have any overlaps there. It's going to make the drawing look a lot worse and unprofessional if there is overlap, so you want to be careful about that. If you wanted to go the extra mile here, one thing you could do is you could put your labels on here for your panel finish and your base finish here too. So I'm going to change this hardware 57 bubble here to read VN1. And then down below, let's go ahead and place a call in here for the solid surface 1, right? Yep. There we go. Easy peasy. You can also take these and kind of just paste them around as well to the other details that are up here, because these are all going to have the same finishes throughout. So VN1, 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 57, and SS1 there. So, all right. See, now that we've got all that, let's go back to that water fountain and add that in. So I can kind of show you a little bit of how you can locate that information. If you go back to the architectural, I remember here they called out PF08, which is the designator for that water fountain. If we go back, let's see if we can find PF08. They usually will stand for plumbing fixture, and then 08 is the number they have assigned to it. So if I go back to the project folder for Proscenium 6434 in the current architecturals, there should be a drawing here that is going to be useful here. We're going to be looking for something called a plumbing fixture schedule or a plumbing schedule, something along those lines. Let's see if we can find it, because I believe we did look this up last time. Oh, right here. Equipment, plumbing, and restroom accessories. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So PF08, that's here. Okay, so it's going to be an LK product. So we're going to go on LK's website and look for this model number here. Now, this is a product that is going to be by somebody else. And so with that being said, we don't have any intentions of supplying that item, but it's a good thing to show it on the drawing because our panels are going to have to get notched around this. See if I can find LK's website here. Make sure that's the same number. LBWDC00BKC. Cool. Yeah, that's it right there. Okay, so on manufacturers' websites, sometimes you have to dig a little bit, but you should be able to find either a cut sheet, an install sheet, or they may even have actual AutoCAD files on their website that you can use for your print. When you do find those AutoCAD files, it'll usually be within something called a downloads area or a what do they call it? Like resources. Sometimes they'll have it in there, but it looks like based on this website, it's right here, right in front of us. And so what I want to do is I want to pull up the top-down CAD file, the front CAD file, and the side CAD file for this, because we're going to be utilizing this for all three views in our drawing here. Because I am downloading these, I want to put them somewhere where I'm going to be able to find them again. A good place to place those is going to be within the current architecturals folder, but under equipment cut sheets and specs. So you can see there's already a folder here for PF13. What I want to do is right click, come on, and make a new folder for PF08. And then I'm going to save each CAD file individually to that folder there. Then what we're going to do with that information is we're going to open those up. It might ask you, or if you want to open this file, because it may have been made with a different file or a different type of program other than AutoCAD. If that pops up, you can just hit OK. That's no big deal. See, I'm getting those for every one of these, but that's okay. Okay, so now we have our top-down view, our side view, and our front view all within this CAD file here. I'm going to copy these individually out into our current CAD. We'll put them in our model space here. And I'll place them individually right next to the view that they're going to go with. So front view clearly will be on our elevation view. So top-down view is the plan view. And that looks really small. I bet you it's probably not to scale. I'm gonna have to try to finagle that a little bit. That's okay. We got this. Oh yeah. Either it's not to scale or this is a very tiny water bottle water fountain. Yeah, definitely not to scale. That's okay. We got this. So if you need to change the size of something, like if you bring it in like this and it's not coming up as full scale, like not real life size, what you want to do is use the scale command in AutoCAD. You're going to highlight that object there, the entirety of the thing, and then it's going to ask you for a base point. And you can select any base point that you'd like. It doesn't even have to be on the object, but you can click any point over here. At the bottom of your screen, in your command prompt, you should see two options. If you don't see these, the important thing to remember is they do still exist. And if you need to get to this, all you're going to do is either click on reference or hit R and then enter. If you click on R or hit reference there, what you're going to do is you are going to then select 2 points. So in that case, what I'm going to do is select this point, and then it's going to ask you what the new length should be. And that new length needs to be the exact dimension of what you've just selected between those 2 points. So 5.27 here. Okay, now that I've got that, I can delete some of the information here that we don't need anymore. And I'm going to also place this on the existing layer to make sure that it doesn't show up as dark lines. So highlight that, place it on the existing layer, and you'll notice that it's not grayed out, but one thing that you can do if you ever see that happen, a lot of times it does happen when you have outside files that you're bringing in from other companies, you go over to properties here, and you'll notice right away that where it says color, it says varies, but it really should say by a layer. And then also go ahead and make sure that these other items like continuous say by layer, your line weight says by layer, because otherwise it'll come up really bold. I did notice too, this is also backwards too, so I'm gonna mirror this so that the front of the water bottle fountain is facing out towards the room to match what my section view shows here. Let's go ahead and get these up to the right scale as well. If I look back at what I had here, from top to bottom, this is 26.98 inches. Okay, and so with that being said, let's go back to our CAD file here. We'll use that scale command again, and we're going to resize this. Be a good practice because it's going to be a repetitive process here. So highlight everything that you're intending to scale. Select a base point, and again, can be anywhere. Then go down here and either type in R and hit enter or click on reference. And then select 2 points that you know what the dimension of needs to be, or the dimension between needs to be. So we're going to go midpoint up here to midpoint down here. And then what we're going to do is type in that 26.98 that we got from the other view, which should give us a full scale water fountain. Go ahead and highlight that again. Go up here, change that water fountain to existing. Go into your properties pane and make sure that you switch everything to by layer. There we go. And there you go. You got your full scale view. And we got one more to do. That would be our top down view here. Let's go back to that here. It looks like from this corner to this corner is 14 inches, which means that we're going to be using those two corners to scale this drawing up. So using that scale command once more, pick a base point anywhere, type in R, and then go from your far left to your far right and type in 14. Highlight everything there, switch that to existing, go into properties, change your color and your other properties to read by layer. And then again, this is also backwards because our panels are facing upward kind of. So what we're going to need to do is either rotate this or mirror it. Use the rotate command to flip it the right way. And if it helps you too, one thing you can also do is you can also group these items using the G or the group command. You start that command, highlight any objects you want to be grouped, and what will happen is it'll allow you to select that entire thing as a group instead of individual lines like what we're seeing here. So let's group all three of our views. And then we need to find the proper location for the water bottle or water dispenser. It looks like their intention is to have the shelf inside at 3'6" from the floor. So we can do that. That'll be 42 inches from the floor. So let's first take this view here. And it looks like our shelf is roughly here. So let's go place this at the floor. And then use the move command, and we're going to raise it up 42 inches. And once you have that at the right height, you're going to just slide this back so that it's sitting in line with your panel. So this lip should be overhanging the front of your panel just like that. Okay, we got to do the same thing all the way around. So up here, we need the shelf here. Let's grab that. Let's make sure that it's centered on the wall. And then go up using the move command 42 inches like that. I'm also going to trim that shop joint line so that way it's not intersecting this guy. I'll just delete the middle part. All right, and then the top-down view, last but not least. This one we don't need to measure the height from the floor, but we still need to make sure that it is centered on the wall here itself. So make sure that our lip is overhanging the panel instead of inside of it. So we're good there. All right. And then from there, all you got to do is place labels on the drawing. So what we're going to do from there is go back to our um, our actual paper space here and start placing labels on the print. So because we know what the actual spec of the water bottle filler is, what we're going to do is we're going to make a note that gives the viewer what the item is. So it's going to say water fountain, then it's going to say LK, have the product number, and then it's going to say by others on it too. A lot of times with equipment, you'll also put the dimensions of the equipment if it's around cabinets or under a counter. And that's really important because if you have those, like for mini fridges or microwave ovens or anything like that, you want to make sure that whatever is around there is going to actually like fit around it, and that refrigerator is going to fit below the counter. So in a case like this, because this just has to be notched around and notched around the panels, what we'll probably end up doing here is we'll probably notch that in the field, but I do still want to put a label on the drawing that actually tells the viewer what this thing is so that they're not left to questioning what that would be. Okay. Let me go back to where we had that plumbing fixture schedule right there. All right. And then let's place a label on the print for that. So one thing that I'm going to suggest, and it's going to be case by case, but one thing I'm going to suggest is if at all possible, it is a good idea to make sure that you don't put a label over top of your drawing. Unless it's unavoidable, which sometimes it will be, it's better to place your notes or leaders or things like that off to the side like this. That way it's not covering anything and it's not intersecting any of the lines you have on your drawing. And by the time you're done printing it, it's going to look a lot cleaner if you don't have text and labels scattered throughout your drawing there. You want to make sure that they're kind of off to the side where they're not overlapping anything. So anyway, bottle filler by others, LK, LBW, DC, 00, BKC. And that's about all we really need for that, just to say what it is and labeling it on the drawing. Kind of just move that in a little bit more too, so that way it's a little bit easier to see what's going on and not so far away. Okay, so I think that we're about through here. You just want to make sure that you've got all of your information, double check your view calls to make sure they're pointing to the correct views. Detail section elevation calls, make sure that you've labeled all of your finishes correctly, included grain directions, included any necessary dimensions you would need in order to be able to build these set of panels. And also making sure that your dimensions match up between views too, because that's also super important. Now, if you keep drawing the way that I've taught you, where you're using construction lines to match your plan view up to your elevation view and your elevation view up to your section view, it should alleviate any concern about not having views that don't line up. But if you kind of start to draw things individually and don't use those construction lines, then you might start to run into some issues where things may not line up exactly right. So because we used the construction line approach to drawing these, I'm fairly certain that everything is where it needs to be. So really not a lot of issues there. Let's see, just make sure that everything else is filled out correctly here. If you want to go back to your drafting schedule to verify to make sure that your information, your title block matches up, we should be looking at P15. which is packet 46405. See, I gotta actually fix that here. 460, or sorry, 46405, my bad. And then make sure your sub number is correct. Should be 003. And then making sure you've also got the correct project manager or correct initials for yourself. The label should be the same too as what's on your drafting schedule. So veneer panels, level 1, lobby 125C. And if you've confirmed that all that information is correct and your page notes have all the information you need to be able to build this, then what you can do is you can go ahead and publish your drawing. So let's go up to the AutoCAD logo, down to publish. And then we are going to remove the blue and yellow icon. That is your model space. You don't want to publish that. So we'll remove that sheet. Just have that one for this drawing here and click publish. All right, then you're going to navigate to the Proscenium job folder on your drawings, new drafting files, and you'll want to make sure that your label is correct, which looks like I got to change that here. 46405. Veneer panels, lobby 125C. Perfect. Okay. Now that I've got that, go ahead and hit select. It will begin publishing to the folder. And once the publishing is done, I would suggest going through that drawing checklist just to verify and make sure that nothing there looks out of place. Make sure that you've caught all of your any little drafting mistakes that you can possibly catch before sending it in. Once you've gone through that checklist and you're ready to go, what you can do now is go back to your schedule and mark that as review. It will disappear from your list and it will go to the drafting checklist where then it will go for review. Yeah, so that's pretty much that. We will do one more panel drawing together. And then once we are complete through that panel training process, we are going to be moving on to islands next. So just to get you up to speed, islands, what they are they're going to combine what you've learned from panels, what you've learned from cabinets, and we will also be adding in a little bit of what it takes to build furniture. So what I mean by that is die walls or stud walls. So when we get to islands, that'll be sort of the next chapter into what you'll be learning is mostly how to build a die wall, what that construction looks like, and how to apply it to different pieces of furniture. So we'll do one more set of panels first, though, and then we'll get into that following this.